Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The Inevitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast about the future of the automobile, the future of mobility. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? I'm Jonny Lieberman. This is...
Hello. And today we have an amazing guest. I think the first time we have somebody who has this occupation where basically all they do is spend their time in the future. His name is Stephen Kosowski, and he is the National Manager, Long Range Strategy and Planning for Kia Motors America. Super interesting guy who spends a lot of his time thinking about where are we going, how are we going to get there, and how are we going to do it in Kia's electrified vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, this guy knows what you're going to be driving in 2030. So
yes,
without further ado, let's talk to Steve.
Steve Kosowski, thank you so much for coming. Your current title, and please correct me if I'm wrong, National Manager, Long Range Strategy and Planning, and this includes...
For what company, Ed?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Kia North America, inclusive of EVs, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, which is really why we have you on The Inevitable.
I want to jump in because you told me something interesting on the elevator ride up, and that you are meeting with the Alliance. This is the new Charging Alliance. So the 7 companies have gotten together, and my question is, what took you so long?
Right. Or can you actually, before I do that, define the Alliance? Is this on adoption of NACS, or is this about the future of CCS?
This is
both.
This is the, we like to refer to it as the JV. The
joint venture.
The joint venture, and this is the JV that's between Honda and BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, Kia, and Stellantis.
Okay.
And it is a group of OEMs.
And you said General Motors?
General Motors, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a group of OEMs who've gotten together to install ultra-high-speed DC charging across the country.
Okay.
And the intent, the aim, is 30,000 ultra-high-speed DC chargers by 2030 across the country.
And right now, the Tesla supercharger network, I want to say...
12,000.
Is it 12 or 17?
Well, it's 20, but the 12 are V3 and V4.
Yes.
Right? That's the split.
Which is the higher end. Those are still not even 350 though. 350 kilowatt.
No,
they're 240.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And then when you say ultra high speed,
Yes,
what
define that.
Define ultra high speed.
350 with upside.
30,000
350 kilowatt minimum.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to write this down.
And
That's
then
exciting.
you ignored the question. What's at
What
the end
took
of
you so long?
No, what's at the end of the cable?
Oh.
Is it going to be a
that
NACS? Is it an NACS?
That's
or is it a CCS1 or something new?
That's not been completely disclosed. It's subject to lots of discussion and debate. But I believe that NACS and CCS couplers is all that's been disclosed. So there will be both. But how many and those kinds of things.
What's the mix?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's being worked out.
And so that assumes that obviously by 2030, V5 or V6 of NACS will be able to deliver 350 kilowatt.
Yeah,
think.
you might think that vector is going that way.
Okay. And then back to Johnny's question.
What took you so long? How come this didn't happen 10 years ago?
Yeah, you're the long-range strategy and planning guy. Come on.
Well, okay, so
Right.
you want to get right into my personal frustrations. You just touched on it.
Yeah, that's what we want. That's what we're here for.
Which was, a little bit so let's go back about 3 years and we talk about Plan S was announced. Plan S is Kia's huge investment into EVs and clean mobility and lots of advanced technologies, 2020. And at the time, it was $25 billion. And I'm just sitting back there thinking, well, what about the infrastructure? That's what we need to do. And, in this company, there's so much going on below the surface. So kind of what you see and feel is just the tip of the iceberg. And they did have quite a bit of discussion and activity. There's work in Europe, if you're familiar with Ionity, which is sort of...
I don't know what Ionity is.
So in Europe is Ionity, and Ionity is a venture between Hyundai and Kia and BMW and a lot of other OEMs, just like it is in the U.S.
And an infrastructure charging solution?
It's a network. Yeah, it's a network. And so that was put in place for the same reasons we're putting it in place here, which is to encourage EV adoption. So I think the company was off and running on that. And, that was a priority. The U.S. side of things, the conversation always was like, well, there's public infrastructure, EVgo, Electrify America, ChargePoint. Let's see how that works.
Okay.
Yeah. Not well, but keep going.
Yeah. Wait and see. I get it. Yeah.
Right.
It's free to wait and see.
Right. And the other part of the argument is that, well, look, it's 70 to 80% of EV owners charge at home.
Right.
Right.
For now, though, with that demographic who is buying EVs at that point in history.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So let's keep an eye on things and see where they go. And I think these discussions with the current JV for North America, they started some time ago, and sort of what's been revealed of late is late in the development of this. So does that help?
It does. I guess my thing is, and I just remember very well as a person who drove a Model S kind of when it launched, and I think one of the first 3 superchargers happened to be near our office, and I took our Model S. I don't think it was ours yet. It was one I was borrowing to the supercharger. And I was like, this just is the smart, forget about how good the car is. This is such a smart thing to do for a lot of reasons. At the time, you had a bunch of people buying $100,000 untested first month vehicle,
right.
And they get to all stand around and stare at each other like, we're so smart. And I was like, this is great. This is how you build, the Tesla Club of America,
right?
As everyone gets to know each other. But then, it just seemed to me at some point over the last 4 or 5 years, the whole industry, our whole future is electric, and they somehow missed, I think, the smartest thing Tesla did, which was buying real estate or whatever they did, putting superchargers that reliably work everywhere so that everybody with a Tesla, they never have the Electrify America experience, just to kick that dead horse a little bit, which is it's utter misery, And so I'm just shocked. How did all these companies miss that part of the equation?
Well, I also think part of the argument, maybe for the industry as a whole, is look, we make the cars, we don't make the gas stations.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, you have this, this company, this very disruptive company, come along, and not only do they make a great electric car, they did the infrastructure. How did all the OEMs miss that?
Yeah. So I think so much of Tesla raises these questions, Johnny. And I remember when we launched the Soul EV in 2014, sitting in a room full of the marketing and the advertising people, and somebody said, why didn't you guys make a Model S? Right? And I remember saying, wait a second, if we had gone to the board with, hey, we're going to make a bespoke aluminum architecture with a 75 kilowatt hour pack.
I'm glad you said that.
Right?
The aluminum architecture is a huge part that no one knows about. Yeah.
Exactly. They would have walked us out.
Right.
Get out of here with that.
Right.
And so Tesla in the lens of the automotive industry is kind of an anomaly.
Oh, totally.
Right? Yeah. And so...
But there was some point where they weren't.
Yes, and that was the Model 3. Right? So I've got some charts with me, but the sales history of EVs, and they kind of chug along, and then here's Model 3 in Bolt, and it just looks like a hockey stick.
Right.
And then here comes Model Y. And I think that was the inflection point where the industry took notice and said, wait a second, these cars are built in a tent, but right?
Yeah.
But
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. And I remember reading, I think it was a MotorTrend article it was an early drive of the Model 3, and I won't forget this. And I would talk about I'm going to get this wrong, you guys,
but okay. Paraphrasing's fine. We do it all the time.
Yeah, I would talk about the body roll if there was some.
Right.
And
I think that was Kim Reynolds' Drive with Franz. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was.
I remember that. It was a really good article. Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is, and this is we've heard this quite a bit now, and I think this is an interesting moment because so much is going on across from the legacy manufacturers especially, but everybody discounted Tesla, and they discounted them for a ton of reasons. First, it was like, that's a roadster.
But
Then it
also,
was a car's too expensive.
Tucker.
Right.
Tucker failed in 1948. Can never happen again.
Yeah, that was,
Right.
that,
No
yeah,
American cars.
Right.
Tesla's the only successful new car manufacturer come along in the last 65 years, and even until 3 years ago, people were still discounting whether they're about to fail.
Right.
All the production hell they were talking about.
The short sellers were just going nuts. Oh, yep, 6 months from now, I'm going to make $1 billion because I'm short selling all the stock.
But now that things have flipped, now it looks like every perceived difficulty Tesla's had is now their advantage. Because it's like everyone's like, you guys are crazy. Why would you spend all that money on real estate? Why would you set up a charging? To your point is super valid. Car companies sell cars. They don't sell gasoline. They're not in that. They're not in that business.
Right.
So the question for you though I have is, if we now are at the stage where we recognize that Tesla is the best-selling electric vehicle on the planet in Model Y,
best-selling vehicle on the planet.
right? Sorry, yes.
Forget it, electric.
It's they a couple years ago they passed all the luxury car manufacturers combined. They were the best-selling vehicle in California. All that stuff, right? Why does expanding your own charging network or delivering that experience to the customer? Why do you need to do it as a JV? How come? Why wouldn't Kia and or Hyundai Motor Group at large, which is a super disruptive company, just say, hey, let's go buy a little piece of land and drop some chargers on it?
Really, really expensive.
Yeah.
The CapEx, the oversight, the electricity, it is really, really expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the short answer.
It gets into the $1
complicated.
trillion range, right?
Multi-billions for starters, but yes, it's really expensive. Really expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And arguably with little or no ROI, that's part of it too. Right.
Well, the ROI is people buy your cars.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good
that's
ROI.
A good point. Right.
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 And again, we did a comparison test recently with the Model Y and the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and Scott Evans and I, coworker did it, and before we drove them both, and we're like, I can't figure it out. They're both fantastic products. We love them both. If this one has better steering, this one has better ride, whatever. Couldn't figure it out. Time to charge. Plugged the Tesla in. 40 minutes later, unplugged it. No apps, no credit cards, no nothing. Charged the Hyundai. There's 4 chargers, and this is a half mile from where there's 16 Tesla superchargers. There's 4 Electrify America chargers, all filled. One, I see there's people in the car, and they get out. I talk to them. You guys leaving? Nah, we're having a problem. But the BMW dealer's around the corner. We have a guy from the dealership coming to help us charge. Okay. They're there, and then 10 minutes later they leave, and I'm leaving out a bunch of stuff. I got out of the car to get some shade, and a person had defecated behind the charger because, of course, there's no bathrooms.
I know as a person. Not a large dog.
I know as a person.
Oh, okay.
I have a young son. And then when the BMW finally leaves without charging, I pull in and Unix error message on the charger. So I don't charge. We go have lunch, and I'm like, how about we give the win to the Tesla because you can't charge the friggin' Hyundai. Right. And then we went to an EV Go, 8 miles away. We had enough range to get there. Plugged in, wouldn't work. It was just on and on and on, And so it's just why would you buy anything but a Tesla?
Right. That's it, Johnny. And we hear that from folks, and it's a real frustration. And arguably, what you're describing maybe was the industry. We've had enough.
Yeah,
and also the other part of it is there's sales risk, right? It's one thing to be kind of chugging along as the industry at 7, 8, 9, 10% of your volume as EV, but if we want to get into the ZEV rules that are gonna push that up to 35%, 43%, so all the way up to
and then 2035.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to start now. And I think the industry collectively saw this, what you're describing as sales risk.
It is. I mean, there's so many. Look, it's like any new tech. There's a billion reasons not to buy it. I went through this. I remember with the iPhone. When the iPhone came out, I was like, that looks great. It's everything I want, but I need a keyboard. And I bought a billion horrible non-iPhones.
I did that too.
A billion. I had this Motorola thing. Nothing worked. And so any excuse not to buy an EV, people are hungry for it.
Yeah.
It's just such a pain point that look, I have an EV. I charge at home. It's painless. It's 100 times better than a gas station.
Yeah.
Except the once in a while where it's like I gotta, or my wife has to, and she has less. She's really unforgiving.
Yep. Well, that's a very important point too, because if we're trying to increase adoption, we have to get from about 75% of the people who are buying EVs are men. And
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard that.
Yeah. So there's a big chunk of the market who has an aversion to EVs. Part of it is related to what you're describing, which is that you can go to a gas station, anybody refuel in and out in less than 10 minutes. But if you go to a charging station, with an EV6, it could be 18, 20 minutes if everything's working.
Yeah.
But that's a long time. And for a woman to be sitting there, there's security and safety issues.
This part we've heard about.
We heard about this from Hyundai's CMO Angela Zapata
and Kristen Lee before we hired her. She
yes.
said the same thing. Like, I don't want to go to at 1 a.m. in New York, go sit in a parking lot by myself for 20 minutes. Yeah.
There's some comfort in a gas station,
knowing
that it's well lit. There's somebody in there.
There's an attendant.
Yeah,
that's right.
And cameras and all that stuff.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
But how does 74% how does 74% of EVs being purchased by men? How does that compare to industry standard?
It's about 50-50 actually.
Isn't like 52% women? I think by all the cars.
And that's an important point because I think that's going to grow. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But it's about naturally split in the marketplace now. But EVs are definitely skewed 74-75% male.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a whole content strategy around trying to get women to influence the purchase of an EV because we think a lot of the men who are looking at them are like rage, like I will never buy one. But maybe the women are a little bit more open-minded and maybe practical about the considerations.
They don't care about the V8 grunting.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's another important point about kind of where we are on the adoption curve. Like, you remember from your marketing classes, the early adopters and the early majority and all that.
Right.
We are there right now. The early adopters have bought, early majority are thinking about it and curious and reading your material and trying to understand this. And that's why things like the charging just needs to be dirt simple. It's got to work.
Yeah.
They don't care about kilowatt hours. They don't care if they had. They just want it to work. And their affinity for the eco-ness and the NVH and the tech that goes with it is so aligned with what the product can deliver. But there's lots of little hiccups and hangups. The charging's one of them.
Right.
Yeah. Because, it's funny. Like, I've talked to a bunch of people. They're like, I don't have 20 minutes to charge. And I think as a species, we've become so good at like I can waste 15 minutes on this thing without even looking, not even caring where my life's gone, it's being sucked away by my phone. But it's just if it just worked, like that's I'm that desperate. And I want chargers. Like there's so many. There's 3 chargers.
Yep.
Like 3.
Yep.
I live in Los Angeles. There's 9 billion people.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, in your daily life, you have so much stuff that you have to get done. You got to be here, you got to be there. You got kids, school, soccer practice, grandparents. The last thing you want to do is to have that one little thing in your day just become a headache. I got enough headaches.
Right.
I don't need another one.
Right.
So we jumped in real deep, real quick on charging, which I know is very sexy to some of the audience.
Hey, it is.
Let's pivot because you have done some of the sexier vehicles in your long experience. At Kia. I'm not kidding. I think in particular, we can go backwards from, you mentioned Soul, I think you mentioned Nero, but let's talk about EV6.
Yep.
So, did you guys, was this purposefully, the EV6 GT was supposed to be like a baby, I call it the baby Porsche Taycan? Did you guys, what was the thought?
Not so baby.
What was the thought in delivering a vehicle that looks that way, that has freaking racing seats in it, and what do we do 0 to 60 in like
3 seconds?
But not only that, there's a consistent. And this is a breaking story we got to start doing. But there's a consistency to EV launches with modern EVs that just kind of isn't there on hot days with gas cars. We just did a video. It's not out yet, but our show head-to-head drag race with the EV6 GT and the M3 competition. And one time the BMW beat the Kia, but 10 times it didn't, and it was supposed to.
So talk us through that. Talk us through about. Just give us all Okay, how did
How'd that vehicle
EV6
come
about? You know, EGMP. I know I'm familiar with the platform, but you're the guy, national manager, long range strategy and planning, that said, okay, it's going to come to this market in these following trims or forms or whatever. How does that go?
So the origin of that car goes all the way back to like 2016.
Okay.
So in 2015, 2016 is when the platform layout and engineering for EGMP started.
Define EGMP for everybody.
Electric Global Modular Platform. It's dedicated to it's only engineered and built as an EV.
Okay.
It's all engineered around the battery, which is under the floor in the center of the car.
And this is the Ioniq 5 EV6 and the GV60.
That's
the
right.
Genesis GV60
and the EV9.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, and the Ioniq 6.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
they're going to iterate on this platform.
that's
but
exactly
yeah.
right, Johnny.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So all of the platform engineering and design and development, the pathway was set in place in 2015 and 2016.
Okay.
And the we'll call it the derivative strategy. You know, you want this, you want that, you want a sedan. What is it you want? That pathway was more or less starting to firm up in 2016, 2017 for Kia.
Okay.
The EV, so going back, there is so much debate and discussion on what it should be, what it could be, what do we need, what do we want, what does the market want, what's feasible, and what makes sense. And the overarching strategy seemed to gel at, okay, well, we've had Soul EV, we've had Nero EV.
Which were, to the point about EGMP being an all-new platform and a purpose-built EV platform, those were not. Those
That's right.
were, let's take an existing internal combustion-based vehicle, front drive, and let's slam in some batteries and electric motor and see how it goes.
That's right. That's exactly right, Ed. And it's we kind of refer to that as a derivative EV because it's derived from a ICE platform.
Right.
But this was, kind of our first clean sheet. It's going to be an EV. What do you want it to be? And there was lots of arguments around the world. I want this. I want that. We over here, we want this. And I think what everybody landed on was, well, let's make a statement. And we can work out what comes off of that platform later. And
what do you mean by make a statement? I mean, I like that. I like that. It's great. I like when car companies make statements. But what do you like? What statement?
So this is aesthetics, performance, capability, range, charging speed, all of these kinds of things that were starting to emerge as. Wouldn't it be great if? Wouldn't it be cool if? Yeah, I like that. That kind of.
So you're not building, not to disparage them, but you're not building a Nissan Leaf. Let's build something flexible enough to take on the Teslas of the world or whoever.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think the engineers are so sharp and their foresight is so good, and we're advantaged by this, that they did put the things in place like the 800-volt architecture, which is what gets you that consistency in your drag races. And it also gets us the high-speed charging and those sorts of things. So rather than do a, we'll call it a garden variety suburban Sportage EV, the view was, let's make a statement and show the world how good our EV competency is, our engineering. And then we can work on utilities that come off of that architecture later. Okay, all right, okay. And the other part of it, too, at the time was that we may not have the cost position to get us that Sportage EV. We should later, but in the meantime, our statement can sell well and not be negative.
You mean from a price position for the consumer, you won't be able to deliver something at that Sportage level entry price?
Well, a cost position and a price position, right? So those are married.
Right. And the EV6, everything is inflated so much, but $45,000 to $65,000 is sort of the range, which is kind of a normal car price.
Right. And I don't know how much you can speak on this, but so this seems pretty far back for you guys. That's fairly. That is some long range planning in terms of you're doing EGMP. Genesis at the time was sort of a hot mess. Not even not even had launched officially.
Well, it was
just
the Hyundai Genesis at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Right.
And
so
the
you
Equus,
so you had
yeah.
already decided, the company had already decided it was going to be its own brand, but then from a, like, I guess I'm trying to ask you, General Motors pioneered this, right? There's the Chevy, there's a Buick, there's Cadillac.
You get a promotion, you buy a Pontiac. Yeah.
So
Purse
from that,
for every purchase, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
From that EGMP standpoint, I know Kia has, within the group, has carved out a space for being like leading on design, maybe leading on a little bit on performance. Hyundai's a little bit more the mass market brand. So was that the approach for, as far as you know, like, do all the national managers get together and say, okay, so we're going to do it this way, you're going to do it this way, and then because Genesis, I feel like GV60 then that was conceived that far back, or was it like two vehicles at one point, and then
Ed, to be frank, I can't comment on. I wasn't part of those meetings for Genesis and Hyundai.
Okay.
I can talk about the Kia part, but when you did meet with R&D, you would see other vehicles identified on the we'll call it the platform plan, that kind of thing. So it may or may not have said Hyundai or Genesis or something like that. Yeah.
So you didn't see the mood board for those other ones.
We didn't see the mood board.
But I like Ed's original question though. How did the GT come about? Because I think that's just a super cool car.
So I think to answer that question, all roads lead to Albert Bierman.
Nice.
Okay.
So
This was my assumption, was all these BMW employees.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Albert. So just for we've mentioned him before on the podcast. So Albert Bierman was like a 25 or 30-year veteran of BMW
Of M division, not
well,
BMW.
Well,
Yeah.
no. When he left BMW, he had left as the head of M, and he moved over to Kia out of Namyang, and he worked there for like 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, something like that.
I think that's right.
And
Yeah.
but the badge went from M to N.
Yeah.
We'll call it like that.
Well, I saw him at, I assume Kia's there too, but Hyundai had a development center at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
And I remember Bierman was there, and there was a Hyundai Genesis that was, we said, it's the hardest working man in Germany. Was this guy who was doing laps for days on end in a Genesis because it was not happy on the Nürburgring. But Bierman's like, oh,
So anyway,
just wait.
so just for context, that's who Albert Bierman is. He's no longer with the group, but how were his fingerprints all over?
So his first off, I would say his impression over the company as a whole, with respect to prioritizing dynamic performance and engineering the cars around dynamic performance. Like if you look at the K5 and its platform, it's on the N architecture, and the way that platform is set up for low center of gravity, the way the engine is positioned, the way it's engineered relative to the previous car, it's so clear that somebody who prioritizes dynamics set that up. And I think there's a mindset now that's within the corporation, within R&D around this. The EGMP happened on his watch as well. So did Stinger. Stinger, he when he came, Stinger was almost done, but he did a lot of work.
There
on
was
the
something
suspensions.
very E39 about the Stinger.
Yes,
Yeah,
and let's touch on that later because
Okay,
there's a little bit of that in the EV9.
Okay.
So I think the EGMP and all the derivatives and the development on that, they happened under his watch. And again, when you drive that car, it is so neutral and forgiving and fun to drive, and the steering is telepathic, and the way that car works is so well sorted. It is so much fun to drive. Not the GT. I mean, the GT is wicked, but so it's clear that that's almost like his capstone project from some kind of graduate program, right?
Got it, yeah.
But I think along the way they realized that the capability, this architecture, and the potential in the motors and the controls led to the GT. Like, let's see what we can do with this. And then, of course, you have the Ioniq 5N and there's some other spicy
we're excited
stuff
that we haven't
too.
driven that quite yet. But
We just saw that. We might have just seen that testing somewhere.
I haven't driven it yet, but I will soon.
But all this is happening. Like, I mean, a lot of this development, probably the finishing touches, happening like during the pandemic, back half of the pandemic. And again, conceived in like 2016?
Well, the platform engineering is late 2015, 2016. 2017 is when the EV6, the code for that is CV. So CV kicked off in 2017.
What does CV stand for?
Well, the
Cavalinos? No.
no, there's within the group's vehicle designations. There's 2 letters and a number.
Probably C segment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then V.
Yeah,
vehicle
for EV.
Okay, EV.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
C segment EV.
Broadly, yeah. And
Drop
then,
the E. Yeah.
and then you'd have 1 or 2 like
Okay.
CV1 or CV2 for the generation, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But so 2017 is when that program really kicked off in earnest. So we had the platform that's in development. What are you going to make off of it? And the if you remember, there was a concept car called the Imagine that was created by the European studio. You can look it up.
Okay.
But that was sort of the first attempt at what can we make off of these dimensions and off of this beautiful platform.
Got it.
And so by that came and went, and people liked it and people didn't, and there was a lot of discussion and opinions about changing the form of that. Let's try and keep the proportions, but change the surfacing and change the feel of it. Which
I'm kind of glancing at it now. It's very show car.
Kind of got a bug eye kind of front end, or a little robot kind of
Yeah.
front end. So, but I guess the question I was really getting to is you're doing this whole thing, but what are you benchmarking from a performance standpoint? Because I call it baby Taycan, this EV6 GT, but Taycan wasn't out
it
yet.
wasn't out yet.
Right. So what were you aiming at? Like and the Model 3 was also only starting to just kind of take off. What were the dynamic targets?
Yes and yes. So the I-Pace.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was out,
yes.
Jaguar I-Pace.
Right.
Boy, great car killed by a terrible range and terrible software. But yes, great.
Yeah.
I like those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good looking too.
Yeah. So I-Pace was a reference vehicle. Let's put it that
Interesting.
way.
Okay.
Anything on the internal combustion side?
I don't remember evaluating any internal combustion vehicles.
But by 17, Model 3 performance was out.
Yeah.
By 17, and that was pretty good car.
Yeah, and
So-
these were part of the mix during the gestation of CV EV6.
Right,
These
right.
cars became references, and lots of other cars along the way too.
Okay.
So just, and this is more for you to kind of just walk us through how you. I've never talked to a long range planner. Are you thinking? Is this somebody else that does it, or is this you? Are you thinking about the end customer? Did you already have like, hey, here's a profile. It's going to be a guy named
Yes,
Johnny.
yes.
He's
2.3
49 years old.
kids.
He has
a full stack and a surfboard.
right. Is
Lives
that
in a loft.
is that where? And if so, who was the EV6 and the EV6 GT buyer? How were they sort of different?
Yeah, so there's a couple different, we'll call them target buyers. And design typically has a design target, and then we would have, we'll call it like a product planning target. And then actually as the car comes to market, a lot of that gets changed into who's the advertising target. Who do you want to portray as the person who's going to buy this?
Right.
So design will be looking for context and references that shape how they shape the car. And some of this stuff go into somebody's house and visit with them for an hour and tell me about your life, your house. Let's go look at your closet. What do you wear? Are you playing an instrument? What do you play?
Right.
And then let's show me the garage. What's in the garage? Have you always had this? What inspired you? That kind of thing. You really start to build a profile of who this person is.
Right.
For the EV6, it was male, techie, a picture of an Asian guy.
Hi there.
in a tech job.
Okay.
About 48 to 52 years old,
Nailed it.
making about $200 a year. And you could sort of say he lives in Seattle, he works for Intel. He's had electrified cars for a while. He gets
Electrified.
it.
Not
Electrified.
necessarily full EV. Okay.
And now he's graduating. So
Okay.
you refer to him as the EV graduator.
Got it.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
And is that was for EV6, right? So GT is like what, that dude?
Well, the GT is really turning out to be a, for lack of a better word, the rich guy's car. Right? I mean, we showed it at the Quail, and there's a lot of interest among a lot of wealthy people. To be honest, Eddie, Ed and Johnny, I haven't looked at the demos on that yet.
Okay.
And I will. Yeah.
That's fine.
Right. Yeah.
It is.
But it's not real quick. It's not that expensive. That's what gets me about the GT was like I think the one 60 something
62.
Yeah, which is like not a big ask for what it. I mean,
Yeah.
not to sell you any cars, but for what it does, that's like a hell of a performance.
Our
Yeah.
CEO drives a Taycan. I'll put him on blast. And
Yeah.
I loaned him the EV6 GT and we had it, and he was like, and I kept calling on him, hey, this is the baby Taycan that might be faster than your Taycan. And he didn't like that.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great. Okay, so switching gears a little bit because I noticed that it's not on your resume, but are you involved at all with this amazing EV9 and
So my
SUV?
my work on the EV9 was early in 2018, and it was a lot of the upfront, early stage. What does this product need to be? What would be some really cool USPs, some unique selling points?
Yeah.
Lots and lots of workshops with engineers, with people from all over the company, with the whiteboards and the little sticky notes and the little working groups about this and that sort of thing. And then my involvement in that was much lower and lower and lower. It became a little more regulatory. A lot of my work now is so regulatory. I probably 75% of my time now is focused on regulatory, and we can talk about.
We'll talk
that.
about it, but yuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going. Tell us about EV9 because the EV9's awesome.
That's why my hair's falling out.
Yeah. It sounds like Ed, you recently drove an EV9.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
might have had one at SUV of the year.
Yeah.
But that's my mom's ordering that.
All
one.
right.
Yeah. So my early work on that was here's the market opportunity, here's the potential, here's the volume, here's what it needs, here's how we're advantaged in terms of range and charging. Step on it because we think this is going to be a thing, and there's going to be a lot of other manufacturers coming. So that was in like 2018, 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then at that point, and again, this is a real shame that you're the long range guy. This is similar to like talking to when we talk to the designers. When we talk about a product that's coming out now, it's literally ancient. You were so deep on this like 3-4 years ago. So I know I can see you pulling it back. It's awesome looking. Like it is like really like it looks like a robot. It's like beefy and burly. It's like chiseled. But it's the right size for America. How, and I'm trying to think back because around that time, Kia Telluride was our SUV of the year, and it had a lot of those characteristics, like really,
And looked super premium.
super premium.
Yeah.
Does that? I mean, obviously that's intentional, but in your capacity, or I'm just super curious as to how Kia tries to set itself apart within the group and go to market with these, because the Hyundai Motor Group in general, all the products have been awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but
and I mean, I know that there's a 3-row Hyundai version of the Ioniq 7 or something coming. So
how do you differentiate, and how do you guys are all trying to, but also kind of going after the same market, especially as these, because these EVs, these 3-row, the big ones are going to be on the more expensive, more the premium side.
Right.
We're kind of all in each other's swimming pools.
Right.
Or swim lanes.
Well, I think principally the differentiation is from a design standpoint. So Kareem Habib, he and the studios around the world, Irvine and Frankfurt, they have a really good vision of what the brand needs to be and how the design communicates that. We have our own studio in Korea. We have our own studio here. Kia is a separate company, so we're working along our own path, but we have access to this toolbox of the platform and the engineering and that kind of thing. That's the way I see it. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me ask you this question though. You said 2018, 19. Start talking about EV9. Now it's late 2023. It's still not on sale. And you said, hey, you just said a minute ago, let's step on it. I thought one of the great things about EVs, and especially when iterations off the platform, is that you can get them to market quicker. Like this one, is this pandemic related? global dragging
Well, okay, so
supply chain?
in that time frame, you had EV6 that wasn't even on the market yet, so they were working on that, and this was in the earliest stages of development. So this is talking about the concept, the package, the dimensions, what's feasible, those kinds of
Right,
things.
but it's an iteration of a platform that you've built.
That's true.
And I thought, I always heard to build a new car, gas powered, is 4 years.
Yeah.
End to end. But in EVs, you can bypass a lot of that.
Yeah.
Especially iterating platforms, you can
Yeah.
bypass a lot of that.
Well, to be fair, it's been on sale in Korea since May, so
Okay, good enough. Good enough.
Fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. Okay.
And by the way, let's talk a little bit about it because it is kind of mind blowing that using the same platform. And again, for you casual listeners, like all cars built these days, they all share. Unless you're like a super one-off exotic car, they're all sharing different components.
Yeah, the best example of that is the Volkswagen Group, the
MEB.
The MEB, whatever, the one that is both an Audi A4 and a Lamborghini Urus is the same platform. MEB Evo 2, that's the platform.
Right.
Like, that's platform sharing.
You move stuff around. Like, it's so wild to me that you can get a vehicle that is relatively compact, although deceptively large. Actually, EV6 in pictures looks quite small, but you get up next to it.
It's a good size car.
pretty big vehicle.
But the EV9 looks it looks like 2 sizes up, and it kind of is, right? In the
it is.
marketplace.
It is. It's bigger than a Telluride, which is a big vehicle, right, to begin with. So-
Well, I mean, hang on. For Americans, it's a
Mid-size.
light heavyweight. Yeah, it's not. Again, go look at an Escalade. That's a big vehicle.
Yeah, right.
To that point, and it's a real sideways way to get into it. What is this thing you brought us here? This plastic metal mylar. I'd say it looks like a coach's
Here, I'll hold it up for the cameras.
clipboard.
Those are some EV battery cells. So I think it's always fun to see what they look like, how heavy they are, what the package is, what the size is. There's 456 of these cells in an EV9. So you can imagine, how do you package those and how do you manage the mass?
And how do you cool this?
He's a amateur strongman, so he lifted up this
Sometimes.
quite. This is what 20, less than 20 pounds? About 20, is it?
No, this is probably like
Maybe
12.
10 pounds?
8 pounds, yeah.
Same weight,
Gallon of
that's what I'm
milk.
saying.
Yeah, gallon of milk. But how do you cool this?
So good point. So okay, these came out of actually an air-cooled Soul EV, so they're kind of old.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But you get the gist on the pouch type package and the size and the weight and everything. And this is actually the heating element that goes with that. And on the Soul, they were air cooled. So
just blow air at them.
Exactly. But currently, the EV6, the packs and the EV6 and the EV9, there's a cooling plate on the bottom. So there's coolant that runs through this aluminum plate.
Are you still doing pouches on
Yes.
Okay, so you're not yet, because I know like Lucid, for instance, who in my mind they're the cutting edge of EV tech. That's my opinion. They're cylinders, and they do have a cooling plate on the bottom. But
Who else is cylinders, Johnny?
Well, Tesla does cylinders, but what they do is they do this weird snaking, cooling snake thing, which is apparently insanely inefficient, according to some guys I know at Lucid. And so you guys are going with pouches.
Yeah, we have pouches. That's
So
right.
what's the upside of pouches versus the downside? There's got to be a reason why you're not using cells or round cells.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not expert on it, but I'll do the best I can.
Sure.
I kind of think that there's some sort of engineering philosophy behind it too. Like, we've been working with pouches for 10 years, so I think our relationship with SK On and LG Energy Systems affords us that. They've gotten pretty good at it, and there's advantages either way. Packaging is one of them,
right?
But Tesla uses cylindrical. They also, for their LFP, I believe, are prismatic, right? So they're like little boxes, right? So, and Volkswagen too, I think they have prismatic and pouches. I may be wrong on that, but so it depends. But
I know, like, for instance, just so we know him, like, Rawlinson at Lucid, he was, he's the chief engineer of the Model S. The Air is sort of Model S 2.0, really, and he was using cylinders and still using.
But they use cylinders because originally the technology came from laptop batteries,
right?
and
That's right.
that was what's most widely available.
When I say cylinders, though, I mean they look like a D battery, like a D battery.
Yeah.
cell.
But back when again, original Model S, Roadster, and original Model S, they were like, who's supplying all these batteries? Can we get them in there roughly in the shape? Versus laptops are not using.
Right.
Like
That's a good point, Ed, because you had 18650s and 2170s and now 4680s and all that. So I think you're right that the battery cell manufacturing industry manufactured cylindrical canisters.
Yeah. And so I was just curious. Like I can see the advantage, disadvantage of both. I was just curious, like why stick with a pouch when? And again, I always. You come back to Lucid, like these people sell a vehicle for over a year now that goes 500 miles on a charge, and the battery's not that big. It's it's 107 kilowatt hour pack. It's just super efficient,
Right?
And they know how to cool it, and
Right.
and it was explained to me that cooling the bottom of a cylinder, which they screwed up, according to Rawlinson, when he did the Model S, he screwed up by doing the snaking on the side of the cylinders, very inefficient way to cool. Bottom of the cylinders, very efficient way to cool, and a lot of other advantages. So I was just like, okay, you like, what's the size of the battery in the EV9?
99.8.
Okay, so it's not. I don't know the range, but I'm going to guess it's nowhere near 500. So like maybe
300.
It'll
on
be-
a good day.
yeah. So like maybe Lucid's onto something. Maybe cylinders are good.
Well, hey, you're talking to long range guys.
Oh,
This is a good question.
Ed's defending.
So
Okay.
he brought the batteries.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. What in your crystal ball, as much as you can tell us, there's so much. I feel like, or maybe you're gonna be, no, you're wrong. Everybody's selling you something. What is the future for batteries in EVs? Like we had a guy sitting in the chair from an LFP battery supplier. He's very compelling. They have this unique Gemini. Like it'll be.
It's two different battery
Two different
chemistries in one box.
Long
yeah.
range, short range.
Yeah.
Like what? When you look at your crystal ball, are you gonna be using pouches by 2030, or is there a solid state? Are we structural batteries? But like all that. What's going on?
Yes and yes and yes.
Okay.
So here's I think about it like this. The lithium ion pouch based battery that we're looking at, that's going to be with us for a long time, maybe decades. The density is going to continue to get better and better and better. And our Kia's history on that has shown that. With you look at the Soul EV to the Niro EV to the EV6 and then the EV9. It's just incredible how
It's ramping up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive. So I think that's going to continue. There's still some room left in that to get ever richer,
Okay.
ever more energy dense cells. Now the parallel to that would be the introduction of LFP. A lot of LFP. I mean, look at GM, Rivian.
Right.
Stellantis has a relationship with Samsung. That's a signal, and so forth.
And
Ford.
LFP is a lithium iron phosphate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it takes out some of the other
Cobalt, and manganese. And
That's
all that.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Graphite.
That's right. That's exactly right, Johnny. And
Yeah.
you have a lower cost basis by 25 or 30%.
But they're slightly less energy dense, right?
That's right.
There's a tech trade-off. You get it's slightly worse batteries for the same weight. Yeah.
yeah,
But cheaper
but
Cheaper,
and less conflicted.
less conflicted. Yep.
And there's a lot of advantages to LFP, and so there's a couple things that are kind of converging here. One is we need to shift the price curve and the cost curve to the left. We need to make the cars more affordable, right? So if I'm a product planner or product manager, I want a lower price point, which means I need a lower cost basis. So as an industry, we got to do that, and that's happening, and that's
And
good.
LFP allows for that because they're cheaper than lithium ion.
That's right.
And I'll tell you what
Well,
else allows for it.
for-
What we started with, which is building 30,000 fast charging stations all around the country, and then putting a smaller battery in it,
Yes.
and you don't have to go 300 or
Yes.
500 miles. You
that
yes.
that is exactly
Hey.
it.
That's the bigger picture.
Right.
That's exactly it. And so so firstly, foundationally, infrastructure is like the cure-all for everything. What I mean is it's good for charge anxiety. It's good for the industry in terms of building the confidence by the consumer. Hey, there's another charger. There's another. They work. The word on the street is they work.
Yeah.
Right? But then also for us, we know that a 250-mile EV can work for a lot of people,
Right.
and it can work for. And what we get when we talk to a lot of people who are EV graduators, they realize they really don't need 300 or 400 miles range. Yeah, it's nice, but
been saying this forever.
they can live their life. But
Yeah.
the hang up is the infrastructure, and if the infrastructure was fixed, then they could, LFP likes to be DC charged. You can hammer those, and they can charge right quickly, and they can go from here to wherever they want to go, and it's no problem. That's kind of the vision. And then for us, we're saying, okay, let's reduce the cost, let's reduce the price. That gives us more material to make more EVs with, because critical minerals and lots of other elements are getting harder and harder to find. Right. So it's kind of so infrastructure winds up being this win-win for everybody. The LFP part of it also can work for lots of other kinds of vehicles, like delivery vehicles, right? Yep. They don't need 300 miles. 200's enough. Right. They can charge to the depot. So now we're saving.
In fact, 200 is probably overkill.
It may be. Yeah, it may be.
But you want, again, that chemistry that can be fast charged repeatedly without degradation.
And then mindlessly 100%.
Exactly.
That's because that just, if you're listening and you've never spent a lot of time with an EV, there's strategy involved with the charging. Like, you don't just charge to 100%, because that's bad for most types of batteries.
For the long term.
Yeah, you want to kind of, and you don't run it down to zero. You kind of want to stay in between 80 to 70 to 20.
The sweet spot.
That's kind of the sweet spot. Yeah. And you're not using, it's kind of weird. You're not using the whole battery.
That's right.
And then every once in a while you do a road trip and you'll go 100%, but you still don't want to get, it's very bad if you run an EV out of juice. It's a bad thing to do.
Right. So that's right.
This is great. So the thing is,
but real quick before you get there, solid state, because Toyota made some big claims. 2025, 900-mile range, solid state battery. It's going to be made of metal. We'll 3D print them, whatever they're going to do. Are they nuts? Are you looking at this? What's going on?
Yeah, we're looking at this, and the group, Hyundai Motor Group, has more or less been on record saying that they'll have solid state before 2030 in commercial production. That there will be, we'll call it pilot production or early production, a couple years before that. They have a battery roadmap that they've shown.
That's like 4 years away.
And what does
no, I mean, that's cool. What is the advantage of solid state?
So in other words, like
thermal runaway.
Solid state compared to lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate.
We're speaking in code.
That's yeah.
Is it thermal runaway?
So thermal runaway is one.
That's fire.
That's fire.
That's
what a great term.
It is. I love it. It's my favorite. So battery fires, people are freaked out about it, even though, as Johnny likes to mention, there are more internal combustion fires going on every day.
Not only that, look, 121,000 cars catch on fire in the U.S. or something like that a year. Right. Very few EVs. No, hey, there's less EVs. Well, what's the rate? Oh, look, gas cars catch on fire 3 times as often as EVs do. Right. All things being equal.
Yeah. So solid state is a solution for some of that because it's solid. It's not liquid.
That's right.
Chemical.
That's right. There's no.
But what's the other advantage? I mean, we can't just be worried about fire.
So it's going to be density.
So it's more energy dense.
That's right. Yeah. And mass.
Be lighter.
Yeah. So you'll have a packaging advantage. You'll have a density advantage. We may or may not have a cost advantage. That's another factor.
Pick two. Right?
Yeah. And that's so we may start to see solid state emerge on luxury cars, or I think even Toyota has said they're gonna try it out on hybrids first and then work them into electric vehicle production.
And so, like, this battery pack that's sitting in front of us here, if you're saying this is 8 pounds or 456 of them, quick math, it's a ton, right?
That's right.
It's about a ton.
Yeah.
What would a comparable solid state battery weigh? So 1 ton for this thing.
So probably not half, but maybe 60 to 70% of this.
Well, that's compelling.
That's huge.
That's compelling because because if you can get the same range at 60% of the weight, that's game changing.
Well, true or false? Is weight the final frontier for all EVs? Mass reduction?
It depends on who you talk with.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, we've heard it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, from a regulatory standpoint, it does matter. It matters a lot. in terms of
let's talk about that. Why does it matter from a regulatory standpoint?
So, okay, we're trying to meet CAFE, greenhouse gas, and ZEV targets, right? Those are the,
that's right. Corporate average fuel economy.
That's right.
Okay, what was the second one you
And
said?
that's a big one because you get fined.
That's right.
Yeah.
And greenhouse gas,
Greenhouse
GHG.
gas, GHG. And then ZEV is zero emission vehicle.
That's right.
Okay, so
those are the three overarching regulations.
And this is what you spend most of your time with.
yes. Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
Go ahead.
So CAFE is fuel economy.
Yep.
Right. So EVs on a dyno in the laboratory produce extraordinary fuel economy, like hundreds of miles per gallon. You know, the label number.
MPGE, but
yeah. And then sort of the laboratory MPG version of that is huge. So I like to look at like an F-150 Lightning is a perfect example. So have we talked about the footprint and
You can show it.
Okay, so fuel economy and greenhouse gas uses something called the footprint, right? It's track width times wheelbase. And the regulators, EPA and NHTSA, they provide these curves that look like this. And each model year, that curve, and this is MPG. I'm going to get this wrong, but you get the gist.
This is great. You're amazing. This is upside down drawing.
So
this is like Leonardo da Vinci after a few drinks. This is
great.
Pretty good. Good.
So you place your car's footprint on this curve that's given to you, and that becomes the fuel economy target, right? So
the bigger it is, the crappier it's going to be.
The bigger it is, the lower target.
The lower the target.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a couple things here. There's a couple important things. Imagine this being 60 miles per gallon, right? This is part of the reason you're seeing cars like Fiesta, Sonic go away. Because there's no way you're going to get that car to hit 60 miles per gallon. You can do this, but it's going to cost so much money. So a short wheelbase, narrow track car is basically being engineered out of the market
By regulations.
Yes.
Because there's no way to cheaply electrify them, and gasoline, even a Prius, awesome, amazing technology, like
Still emitting a little
56
That's
miles
right.
per gallon.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And
And by the way, it gets higher and higher and higher every year.
Yeah. Interesting. Fascinating. Wow.
So the other part of this is that it's
Real quick, this is part of CAFE.
This is part of
talking
CAFE, and then greenhouse gas is actually the inverse of this, because as you consume less fuel, you're emitting less emissions. So
Right.
you could basically do a mirror image of this, and that becomes your greenhouse gas curve.
Got it.
This is called, what curve is this called?
Technically, it's called the Volpe curve, but we just refer to it as the CAFE curve.
The CAFE curve.
It's also the reason why every successive vehicle you've seen since about 2012, longer wheelbase, wider track, because the
Ride quality. I always thought it was ride quality.
Well, you're right, Johnny. It's pitch stability, it's second row package, it's proportions. Everybody loves a longer wheelbase.
Looks better. Yeah.
It looks better, and so. It's why the engineers, why we want to get as far out on this curve as we possibly can to lower that target. All right, so...
But the problem is, as you get bigger vehicles, you need bigger batteries and bigger motors,
Which
and
makes
everything's
things
heavier.
heavier.
That's exactly right, Johnny, and you got to manage that, and that's mass, and it's materials, it's cost,
Right.
how much high-strength steel, how much aluminum, what is... So, okay,
And
so...
also battery size.
That's right.
Because that's, lithium ain't cheap.
And then we'll layer on top of this. We had a great conversation at SUV of the Year with one of our guest judges, who I won't name on this because he doesn't work for the group.
Yeah.
But he said the biggest problem with EVs now and how disruptive they are to the traditional legacy OEM model is that it used to be the larger the car, the more the margin you would get in selling it, because it's really easy to turn like an F-150 into like a Navigator and just throw some leather in it, and then the leather might cost you another $2,000, but you can charge $10,000 on top of that thing, right? You don't get the same advantages with an EV because the larger you have to make it, the battery is so expensive,
Right.
and that makes it harder to support the range and the performance that you want out of a large car.
That's right.
That's wild.
Okay, so, all right. So CAFE, so this is the CAFE regulatory problem. Greenhouse gas, if you're an EV, did the government just say you're zero? or do they care about manufacturing of the battery or anything like that?
That's not a factor.
Okay. So you're just zero if you do an EV.
Tailpipe emissions. That's
Okay,
right.
is zero. And then the third one was
ZEV, zero emission vehicles.
and so that's instant win with an EV.
Yeah, basically.
Why wouldn't it be? Why not 100%?
Yeah. So what the ZEV rules say is that you need to sell EVs, fuel cells, and you can sell plug-in hybrids, but not.
They say you have to sell fuel cells.
They say you can choose between EVs and fuel
Okay,
cells.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it's a lot of people, hydrogen fuel cells we're talking about. A lot of people, I read way too many comments. I've wasted way too much of my life reading comments. A lot of people say,
Those are the best parts.
EVs are BS and they're evil and hydrogen's the future. Now we know how Hyundai Corporation feels about fuel cells for big trucks, but what about passenger
How does
vehicles?
Kia feel
How does
about
Kia feel about fuel cells
fuel
for
cell.
passenger?
So we've kind of hung our hat on EVs. We've had this conversation with the group for many, many years. And the view is that for us to electrify and be commercially successful, EVs are the path forward.
Yeah.
The group has wonderful fuel cell technology. The Axion truck and
We sat in it.
yeah, it's really
It's cool.
something to behold. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that the feeling is that commercial applications for hydrogen are going to get a lot more traction, so to speak, than retail
than passenger,
civilian vehicles. Yeah, for lots of reasons. And a lot of it's easy just to say, well, it's infrastructure. There just isn't enough infrastructure.
Yes, because as bad as EV infrastructure is, you have electricity at your house. You do not have hydrogen at your house.
Exactly, Johnny. Yeah. So we've had this conversation with the head office many times. What about this? What about that? No. We're going to stick with EVs. That's the path forward. That kind of thing. Yeah.
And then you mentioned fuel cell / EV, but also hybrid. Like
plug-in hybrid.
Is there plug-in hybrid? So a plug-in hybrid can't count as ZEV.
It can.
It can.
Yeah. It is.
As long as it has EV only driving range, right?
Oh, that's really? I don't like that law. That's not ZEV. That's like maybe ZEV.
Well, maybe
not ZEV.
This is a lot of internal friction within the Air Resources Board in the industry because
yes, good.
The Air Resources Board's argument is that PHEV owners don't plug in. You're driving around with a trunk full of bricks.
Exactly right.
You're only getting in for the HOV decal.
And when it kicks on, because the cats are cold and you're at highway speed,
that's right.
You have 2 minutes of the most noxious crap coming out of a tailpipe. They're dirtier than gasoline powered cars for that 2 minutes.
That's exactly their argument, Johnny.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is important because so in our current ZEV rule, we're allowed to sell PHEVs. We don't get the credit we do for an EV. Right. We get about 0.7 credits, and an EV gets us about 4. It actually gets us 4. Now, all that changes in 2026 with a new set of ZEV rules. So to your point, Johnny, the Air Resources Board has said, people don't charge, So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make the range requirement 49 miles. So you don't
that's going to mess up a lot of people.
You don't get any credit for less than 49.
Oh boy. Jeep is very sad right now. Go ahead.
Yeah. You need a certain size onboard charger. That's another one.
What do you mean by size charger?
The onboard charger has a capacity, like 3.3 kilowatts or 11 or what? Yeah.
Okay. So like if let's say the Kia Niro PHEV, what size charger is that?
That is a 3.3.
So you're going to have to update that by 26.
That's right.
So this really is your whole job.
That's right. So, but all these things affect the product and the strategy and the volumes and all of this. It is a huge matrix. And then the other point that goes to your point about the emissions.
The NOx. And we say this is not CO2, this is NOx.
NOx and HC, hydrocarbons.
Right.
Is what they call
nitrogen oxide. And hydrocarbons.
Thank you. High-powered cold start. So that means that when the engine does start, that the emissions need to be what they are when the cats are hot. Yeah, so all
How
that's
do you do?
You gotta preheat, pre-warm.
You
Well,
send
it's-
electricity to the cat. I don't know.
it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And this is where you have these arm-cross discussions with the engineers.
Right.
We're over here saying, but, there's a market for these. People love these. They pay a premium. Just the other day, I went and looked for what is a used Sorento PHEV going. It's about what it went for when it was new with 20,000 miles on it. They love
So
it.
wait, so your engineers are like, no, let's just sell EVs? Is that sort of
the posture? The short answer, Ed, is yes. The posture of the company is electric vehicles are the path forward, and that PHEVs they're going to become a much smaller part of the mix.
Right.
a dead end on the tree of evolution?
Can you project, let's say, 2030? Because right now, if you look at, gas cars are still the overwhelming majority of vehicles sold. Though it's changing. In the U.S., EVs are now 8%, 9%?
That's right, 8.2%.
8.2.
Yep.
And PHEVs.
They're about 4 to 5%.
Okay, so let's say 5, make it easy. 5, 8, 13. So 87% of vehicles sold are still gas or diesel. What is the breakdown in 2030 in the U.S.? What are we looking at?
So if I just defer to the forecasts have it between 5 and 7%. Like they're not going away.
What's 5 and 7?
Internal combustion.
The PHEVs.
PHEVs remain
about 5 to 7%.
okay.
Yeah.
The-
And then what's the EV gas split?
So, if the Biden administration's EPA proposal for 2027 through 32 greenhouse gas rules go through, it wants 60% nationally as EV, and by 2032, 67% nationally as EV. And it's a very contentious topic. This is part of the reason why the UAW is on strike, and
Right.
a lot of other debate and discussion on this. If those rules are proposed, there's a lot of debate. It's not final. It could be final next year. And if they go through, that's what we're looking at: 60% EVs by 30.
So just to break, I'm just trying to do that. So the U.S. market is 14 million, 15 million?
15. Yeah.
15 million. So 60% of 15. So we're talking like...
By 2032, call it 2/3 of that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So 10 million, 10 to 15
million.
million.
That's right.
8 to 10 million in 2030.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, let me ask you this, and you must look at this. Like, how sensitive are car buyers to gas prices? And it's maybe a California question, since our gas prices have exploded in the last 2 weeks, literally to over $7 Diesel is like $8 a gallon. It's insane.
Yeah.
Is this, and the rest of the country is still $3 a gallon apparently, but as let's assume the country follows California to some degree with cars. If as gas prices go up, do EVs sell more or do PHEVs sell more?
Yes.
Okay.
They do, and we used to track this really closely, and the sensitivity, particularly for hybrids, is pretty rich. Like gas prices go up, and then you'd see the hybrids go up.
We see that in the traffic to stores on MotorTrend.com.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. People start when they peaked during the pandemic, people were losing their minds.
I mean, I filled up my Alfa Romeo the other day, and it was just I pulled in the station I always go to, and it was premium was $6.79 a gallon, and I was like, well, actually, maybe my next car isn't gas because I want to buy one more gas car, but maybe.
You have dominated the last series of questions. I'm going to ask him some stuff.
Oh, you're feeling?
Yes. That's how you shut out here. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm going to ask you a bunch of random,
Wow.
just a bunch of random.
What a great partner I have. Go
Random
ahead, Ed.
questions here.
I'll look at Instagram. Go ahead.
Separate from these are good questions. Separate from all of this, all the long range playing with Cafe and Zev targets and all this stuff. Because we talked a little bit about weight, and I saw this article. Are you concerned at all, bigger picture, of how heavy all these EVs are going to be and the impact to infrastructure? There was some article, I think The Atlantic or something wrote about how all of our parking structures in the U.S. were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s for cars that weigh 2,500 to 4,500 pounds. And now all of these EVs are coming out like 5,000 pounds plus.
Yeah.
Like
7,200 pounds.
Right. Is that anywhere you guys like think about this stuff? You're like, this is somebody else's problem.
I don't know that we view it as somebody else's problem, but
Put you in a corner there.
you know,
Sorry.
the one thing that's cool about the group is we have access to Hyundai Steel.
Okay.
And Hyundai Steel is a remarkable partner, and there's hundreds of metallurgists who are constantly working on really strong, really lightweight steel. So, like if you look at EV6, it's not actually that heavy. Even the EV9, it's 5,800 pounds, but there's other utilities that size that are equally heavy. So there's some advantage there, but. I don't think we've really talked so much about infrastructure, Ed, with respect to bridges. Although there's a street off the 5 on my way home that says no vehicles over 6 tons, and I was thinking if I was driving a Hummer EV, I wouldn't be able to drive on that street.
Right.
And it's
9,000 pounds, easy.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
You could easily
You're
drive
right.
that.
But a semi truck or a towing a Hummer. Or
a Hummer towing a Rivian. No,
Yeah.
Right.
But am I allowed to talk yet?
No, not yet. Okay, so let's let me ask you a personal question. And there is only one incorrect way to answer this question. Are you a car guy
I'm a
yourself?
total car guy.
Huge car guy. Okay.
I grew up, Ed, in Chicago. I went to school in Michigan. Grew up in Chicago, went to school in Michigan, and my dad and my brother and my family members, all my friends were totally into cars.
Okay.
And in the neighborhood were Camaros and Challengers and Chevelles and Mr. Stotts with his orange Firebird and my neighbor with his Corvette.
We'll come back to that. But
Okay.
in your current role, then, is this just like you're awesome at this? You got all the numbers in your head, but are you also like, man, this stuff is terrible. I'm still all by team ICE. Or are you into the EV transition? Do you feel like it is inevitable? Are you on board?
Yeah, so yes and yes and yes.
Okay.
So I'm into it. It's unquestionably inevitable. The degree to which is what is because they don't work for everybody, and they work for a lot of people, and they work really well. But there's so many moving parts to answer that question. But so yes and yes and yes, they're inevitable.
There you go.
We as an industry are going to go off the deep end on this, and so much of this is being driven by managerial philosophy, and we can talk a little bit about that when we get to that. We look at that pretty chart.
Whoa.
Hold
it up. So
well, we'll get to that. He's going to share it with us.
Okay.
But let's.
Okay.
Okay. So let me just ask a follow-up before we get to that, and then you can go. We'll go to this, or you can go whatever. But you in your personal life, or if you're active in car forums, what do you tell the haters? Like, do they talk? Because you're going to get a bunch. So in the comments below this on YouTube, they're going to be like, "This is all garbage."
Yeah, it's
blah,
all
blah,
garbage.
blah.
EVs are killing the planet.
They're.
I
would
government,
say
COVID vaccines tracking me.
right. You've highlighted a lot of. We talked about 10 minutes ago about all the advancements coming to battery technology, and that's the kind of thing I go back to in any conversations I have, which is like, look, guys, internal combustion. Great. We're living in the golden age of horsepower. These things have never been more powerful and more efficient. But they're still iterating, but more effort and resources and really smart people are being put towards EVs, and the opportunity across the whole industry to find new technologies, to find interesting battery chemistries. This is like unheard of. Like they found U.S. found like another huge lithium store, right?
Oh, not huge, the biggest ever.
The biggest ever in the world.
In a volcano.
Right.
Yeah.
This would not be happening. No one's looking for this stuff if there wasn't like this huge potential and opportunity in this changeover. And there's going to be a cascade of these kinds of advances across every part of it. So yeah, is there some parts of it that are sort of problematic right now or too expensive? Yes, but the whole point is innovation, some of it unfortunately mandated by some really arcane or really weird policies, but we're getting there, and that's what I'm fairly optimistic about it. Where do you sit?
So we're fairly optimistic about it too, and Ed, I think the way you characterize it is absolutely accurate, which is we're in early days. It could be the second inning of a ball game, if you want to make that reference. And I think if you just look at we'll call it the tech progression, for example, of Kia and the industry as a whole, it is remarkable what's been engineered, what's in the market now, and if you peek behind the curtain or look in the laboratory now, what's being developed is going to blow your mind. And
Can you give us a peek, like you don't have to say a name or any numbers, but like what'll in 2030 when the second gen EV6 comes out or whatever year it comes out, like what would blow my mind about it?
So I think it's going to
in
be
broad strokes.
It's going to be more range, faster charging speeds, more conveniences, less concern about charging. I mean, once that gets erased, I think those kinds of things.
Inductive? Are we wireless charging? Are we going to pull into a pad in our garage and everything?
In some places you will. We aren't working on it for Kia, but I think Genesis.
That's
a robot arm.
There's that,
or that becomes the luxury thing though. Rolls-Royce really wants inductive.
Right. So that'll be there.
Okay.
But I think every day there's news and stories about tech advances, battery advances, motor design advances, all those kinds of things every day. Yeah. And that we're only seeing this much. Imagine what you're not seeing.
Right.
Well, I have a pretty good idea what I'm not seeing, but yeah.
No, that's what does my head in about, especially, again, all you commenters are about to like angrily write something. It's like, guys, I mean, this is, if you go back to like what hot rodding was back in the 60s and 70s, like it literally was like, let's take the coolest parts of the space program and then try to apply it to cars. And the same kind of thing is going on.
40s and 50s, but
yeah. But it's in the EV space. So
yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm of the feel the for like I always tell people this when they're like EVs suck, and I go, if a RAV4 is electric, do you care? Do you lose any? Well, no. I hate RAV4s. Okay, great. So if that goes electric, great. And it's just really, you get down to like, I just don't want my Challenger to become electric, and that's kind of the argument, because like luxury cars are better electric. SUVs and off-roaders better electric. Towing, I got a long way to go there. We'll figure that out. But like everything else, pure sports cars, muscle car things, the weight really is, in my mind, is really problematic. Is good. We just did another one. We did a Cadillac CT5V Blackwing versus even more horribly named Mercedes EQ
AMG
EQE. Or something like that, whatever the hell the name is. But like, damn, that Mercedes is quick. Cadillac, 668 horsepower, Mercedes 667, annihilation. Right. But turn the wheel and like, ooh, like boy, Cadillac's 1,000 times better.
Right.
And 4,200 pounds versus 5,500 pounds.
Right.
So like my rant
is there a
here.
Question in there?
Yes. When are these damn solid states coming?
No. I got a question for you.
But do you basically agree with what I'm saying? Is that
Yeah, and there's I go back to, they're not for everyone, but they can work really well for lots of cars, for lots of people. There are instances like that, and there's also a lot of other.
But real quick, when you say not for everyone, like who are they not for? Because it seems like a real small group to me.
You would easily say for the charging related challenges.
Apartment dwellers.
Yeah. That's one.
Yeah.
And the cost part of it, the cost and price part of it, right? So
I meant what I meant was, if everything turns electric tomorrow,
and these were engineered out, these problems. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what? But like, you can't really do an electric Corvette that drives as good as an electric Corvette, or an electric 911 that drives well. And maybe Porsche has that new Cayman coming. Maybe they figured it out.
Maybe they figured it out.
And you can't, the ease of towing a house with a diesel F350. I know it's not a Hyundai Kia concern, but like long haul towing, not good with EVs.
That's a challenge.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
But so who? So you keep saying it doesn't work for everyone. So you're talking about the present.
Yeah. So that would be a really good use case, right? Somebody with an F-350 Super Crew that's a work truck that's got to tow a big trailer. Maybe he has a horse. These aren't going to work.
Got it.
There's got to be other solutions.
Got it.
Do you want to cover this before I ask you some bigger picture
Okay.
existential questions here?
So this
I'm
is
gonna hold this up.
We're gonna see it. We're gonna try to get this graphic to put on the screen for people.
Okay,
but
cool.
this is called the. Why don't you read it out first?
So in some of the presentations we do, we just want to give folks a backdrop about the company's philosophy and sort of the vision. And there's like three important parts here. And, at the highest level of the company, our president in the U.S., Mr. Yoon, and the president of the company in Korea, Mr. Song, and then within the group, executive chair, Yes Chung, they've more or less said, look, there's three important things we want to focus on: sustainable energy, sustainable mobility, and sustainable planet. The energy part relates to the operation. And we're decarbonizing the products and the machine that makes them. So if you imagine the plants and the operations around the world and their electricity consumption, the supply chain, production, those kinds of things that consume energy, that's a big part of the group's, the company's, Kia's footprint, and that's going to be engineered lower and lower and lower through solar and wind and storage and those kinds of things. The sustainable mobility ties to electric vehicles, purpose-built vehicles, electric vans, our relationship with Lyft and Uber, and then the sustainable planet part relates to the stuff that's in the car. So the EV9 is a good example of this, where we're engineering out of the interior, the hydrocarbons that go in to make the plastics. So using recovered fish nets and recycled PET bottles and those kinds of things to make the interior parts. So collectively, we're decarbonizing the machine that makes the machine, and we're decarbonizing the products that come out of it.
Okay.
So that's part of why the directive from the highest levels of our company is, make more EVs.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Okay.
This chart is remarkably similar to one I saw the BMW had. They might be, I forget. Yeah, they're sort of carbon neutral. I think by 2050 is their plan. But it was real similar. And again, it's the factories that are
They consume a lot of energy.
Yeah.
This is GM timeframe. This is kind of why we're here, to be honest. Like, we kicked this thing off after everybody started to put out their carbon. They're all EV and their carbon neutrality targets. About 3 years ago.
The original name of the inevitable was
Project 2036?
Project 2036. Great name.
Great name. Wow. Just rolls right off the tongue. Okay, let me
cool.
ask you an existential question here, because this is a great way to crystallize what the group is doing in terms of the goals, and you said at the best at the end, this is why there's such a strong push towards EVs. What happens when in 2035, 40, 45, when there are all these EVs on the roads and they're all, and this is where you can feel free to fight me, all the same? Is this in your long range planning, will all EVs be commoditized in the sense that they're going to all be quiet and they're all going to be fast, right? These things are all doing like sub 3 seconds to 60, right?
Well, not all, but
yeah, but they could, right?
Capabilities there.
Yes,
sure, yeah.
but they'll all be quiet. They'll all be fast. Theoretically, by then, all this charging will be fixed,
Nipped in the bud.
So then it's like, and this is where, again, this is for the haters. You basically turned a car that I love, this thing that I loved, into an appliance, right? Like, they all kind of deliver sort of the same thing. Agree, disagree? What's in the tarot cards for the industry and for Kia in particular?
So I think there will be some of that, but I think that the people in the industry. So firstly, the aesthetics part of it, it'll be really clear, and you've heard it a million times that the skateboard platforms provide the designers wonderful proportions and all of that, right?
They could put a seat on the roof. Sure, go nuts, yeah.
Some of the stuff that's peeked behind the curtain, Jonny, is so freaking cool. It is really exciting to see what our designers are thinking and how creative they are, and the latitude that EVs give the designers to change that up. So I think you're not going to see a bunch of vanilla cars rolling around that's not going to happen. On the performance side of it, though, I think that sort of hacking an EV relative to how you would kind of hack an ICE car, change the cam, change the intake manifold. I think there's going to be a little bit of that, but not as much.
I just mean, does it matter though? Will it matter? Like, why would you wouldn't need to? Like,
You probably wouldn't need to.
Right.
You probably wouldn't need to. But, the other part of it, too, is just the enthusiasts in general. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but doesn't it feel like there's a lot of enthusiasts a lot of people who aren't enthusiasts anymore? They're too busy. I mean, people don't have time. That's part of it.
Well, now you're going to take away even the ability to do anything with it, right? Even if you wanted to, if you had the time, these vehicles don't necessarily lend themselves to be.
But okay, so
popped up.
yeah, fair enough. But the EV6 is a good example of what you have right out of the box, or a Model 3. Those cars are fast.
Yes.
Those are really fast cars.
And it's funny. Like I was up on Angeles Crest yesterday, and there was a bunch of the weekend crowd who had Toyota 86s, GR 86s. Stuff like that, and they weren't really tuning the engines much because I think modern engines.
Well, you can't. California makes it hard.
Yeah.
It makes it hard, but they were slammed, they were cambered, they had body kits, they had paint, they had custom steering wheels.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think there's still lots of opportunity.
I'm with you, Johnny, 100%. And there was an EV Expo in May in Long Beach that we were at. And
Electrify.
I don't know.
We were there for 5 minutes, but we were there. Yeah.
But there was a whole section on modified cars. There was a whole bunch of EVs that were just like you described. Some of them were stanced, but some of them were very tastefully done.
Yeah. And I would real quick add to your point, though, real quick. I hear people say that, but I'm also like, well, look at the majority of the cars sold in this country today. They kind of stink. I mean, they're boring. They're just minivans cut to look like SUVs that have no off-road functionality whatsoever.
Well, to that point,
you know what I'm saying? Like it's not so exciting. It's not. I'll
reframe the question another way because I didn't really get to the answer that I'm looking for, which is if all of these vehicles do end up having a lot of the similar features. Let me just stop right there. Are you concerned, or are you looking in your long-range planning, competitive analysis about, are there just going to be fewer brands out there? Are there some that are not, we're in this really strange moment in time. Who's not going to make the turn?
Ooh.
Like, again, you're part of a huge global organization that has some very strong products right now. But when we look at others in the space, we're like, man, I don't know, those guys, they don't even have an EV offering.
I'll call them out. Stellantis. Like, I don't think they sell a single EV.
Mazda. I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about Mazda. You don't have to name names. Obviously, it's not impolite. But do you think globally? And then follow-up question: How much is China on your radar?
Ooh.
So I think there will be brands that go away. I think it's inevitable. Either the regulations will engineer them out of the marketplace, or a lot of other market factors will just make them go away. And that's Darwinism, I guess.
Yes.
Right? Sort of marketplace Darwinism.
It's automotive in the early turn of last century, where there was all of these innovations.
Everybody who had a bicycle company suddenly had a car company.
And then General Motors bought them all.
Right.
Then the Great Recession.
Right. Okay, but keep going.
Right. So I think the easy answer is yes, there will be fewer brands. That's inevitable.
One more time.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, General Motors only had 4 brands, and then they did the 4 companion brands, and then Pontiac survived in 5.
Okay.
So anyway,
we keep going.
Just and
then China.
Accurate.
So China, absolutely, yes. And this is the interesting thing about our company. Kia sells into 170 countries around the world, including China. So we're exposed to competitors and markets and dynamics and all the moving parts in the global economy, including China. And China's pressure in the primary markets is unquestionably felt. And so,
in what way?
What do you mean primary market?
So Europe.
Okay.
North America.
Well, not yet North America because they're not here yet.
But they're surrounding, right? If you look at, they're in Mexico. There's 10. I think there's 10 Chinese brands in Mexico. Right?
We have a documentary coming out on that. But keep going.
Okay. Yeah. And you look at the Model Y into Canada from China, and I think Model 3, and so forth. So, that's becoming clearer and clearer. But the so if Kia is to be successful globally, it has to be able to go toe to toe with China. I mean, there's a lot of things that relate to policy and where you build.
Yep.
Things like the Inflation Reduction Act, those kinds of things. A lot of moving parts in this, but China's pressure and force in this sector. I mean, look at how much control. I have another chart for you, Johnny. That basically
more charts the merrier.
Oh my! So this one is.
I failed geometry like 3 times. Keep drawing charts. Yeah.
So it's all the different battery components.
Yeah.
The lithium and the lithium processing and the.
The manganese, the cobalt,
right.
the nickel.
It's a bar. Forgive my art.
Yeah.
And so forth. And here's China. Here's China. Here's China. Yeah. And here's a little sliver for. Right.
Right.
And so. Their force on this sector is huge, so we have to compete with that, and we will.
What about the technology, though? Is there a concern that they're so far ahead? We had Jim Farley on recently, and he said like China. He's been telling me for years China has no. They're so far ahead in so many different ways in terms of the experience they deliver. And some of the vehicle, the styling, whatever, but the tech basically is out of sight. Are you concerned at all there?
I would agree with Jim Farley on that. Okay. Concerned, I have a lot of confidence in our engineers and our leadership. So
right.
Okay, last question on China, because again, I love talking to somebody who's living in the future. Basically, you're thinking about this all the time. I got a lot of family. My family's from Hong Kong. They're some of the older generation has done this pivot towards mainland China. Like, this is amazing. They have a huge problem from a population perspective, right? This is what I've been reading in all these Atlantic and the Economist is that their birth rate has plummeted. First time first time in like 50 years, they had negative growth. They'd lost to 850,000. Because their one-child policy is now, please have 3 children, and we're going to pay you for the second and the third.
But they also started educating women. I mean, there's a direct correlation. You educate women, birth rates go down.
Right.
Direct correlation.
So are you? And this, I've asked now the long-range planner to please be a global economist. Are we? But seriously, in 20 years' time, which is roughly the window we're talking about, like China could also maybe not be that relevant. There's something like I just heard.
Well,
this
also,
podcast.
they have a fascist totalitarian regime, which they can change their mind at any moment. And suddenly, like, remember Lincoln's strategy was China. That was literally Lincoln's strategy, and it's like, you know what? Now it's not because we don't want to deal with them,
right?
And they don't want to deal with us. So,
any thoughts there in that direction, or you're like, it's too big?
It's a huge topic. I didn't really do my homework on that, but I do have some. So I think yes, and I have read similar articles like the Japanification of China.
Yes,
right, right. And so
explain that for casual if you haven't read that article.
China in the 80s was supposed to be like
Japan in the 80s.
Sorry, Japan in the 80s was this huge thing. It bought up all this real estate.
Pebble Beach. They bought Pebble Beach. They're coming for your job.
Right.
Gung ho. Remember
but then they had a similar thing where their population was not replacing itself fast enough, and they're now in like decades long.
And their economy bubbled,
yes.
And since '96 there's been like negative GDP growth.
Right. There's a lot of points of view saying similar things are going to happen to China, that we're sort of overthinking or overestimating the China threat. I don't know about that. I think
And why don't you know about that? Like, what's different about? I mean, besides the obvious, what's different?
Firstly, I'm not expert on China or economics, like geopolitics, and a lot of these. I read about it, but trying to synthesize that and come back is, I guess my point would be, don't underestimate China.
Right.
That's I think the key.
I got an easy solution for them.
And then, go ahead.
Open the borders. Like if they just did mass like immigration, like, but they'll never do it.
Yeah. I got another one. Like, get rid of communism.
No, that doesn't help.
Oh, okay. No, but I was going to say, in my mind, in terms of in terms of central planning, great. In terms of EVs, the difference is that Japan and this is why World War II happened, never had any natural resources. China got natural resources, and they control manufacturing in a lot of really key areas.
Yes.
So that to me is like, I think there's a baseline China can't really go below, too big to fail, in other words, where Japan never was.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the Inflation Reduction Act will have a big, I think, a big impact. Not so much like hurtful on China, but for us to, in a way, bootstrap this and show the world that we can do this without them.
Right.
Batteries, car production, chips, the whole thing.
Chips,
right?
yeah.
So,
Well, because we outsourced it. I mean, we had it all.
Well,
We just gave it away. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. And now's probably maybe 4 or 5 years from now, we're into 2027, 2028, where I think we're going to start to see some fruits from this.
Okay, well, and we'll just jump out of like a super not controversial, not controversial, not big picture topic of China, and just go a much easier one, which is from a policy perspective. We're heading into an election year.
Oh, God.
Okay, how much of what you worry about and work on, all these policies you talked about, you mentioned Biden, the Inflation Reduction Act, how much of that can be undone in the next administration? Say it's not
goes
Biden.
the other way.
Say it goes the other way. How much of that can be walked back or changed? We saw that happen during the Trump years where, all the car manufacturers said, we're going to go do this. And then Trump came out and said, you know what? Well, maybe we'll go wherever you're going. Is this like a nightmare scenario for you or for the country or the industry?
Oh man, there's like 12 questions there.
I know.
I thought we were here to talk about EVs and,
we are. We'll get back there.
This is a real EV question.
So,
actually,
but what you're describing is top of mind for everybody, which is, first off, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the administration? Is President Biden going to get reelected? Is Trump going to run? What is going to happen there? We're not really sure. It depends on what you listen to or what you read.
Sure.
The NPRMs, which are notice of proposed rulemaking for the EPA rule, and I'll answer your question. That has to be enacted by about May or June. If there's some wrench in the works, if it doesn't get enacted,
government shutdown.
If there's some delay, some significant delay that pushes it into like July, is coming.
Yeah. So
if that doesn't get enacted, then it would. Let's see if I can articulate this. Then, if it does get enacted after, say, June, then the next administration has potential to unwind that. That's important. So those rules that we talked about, the EPA rules that are going to require much higher proportions of EV, much stricter criteria pollutant, tier 4 emissions, things like that. If that approval gets delayed into the second half of 24, then the next administration, if it's the GOP, could unwind that in like the first 3 months, and then right, that kind of thing. So that could happen. If all of these rules all these proposed rules are made into law, let's say May of 24, then we as the manufacturers are caught in the middle of all this. We just want to make cars, right? So we're going to go forth with our plan, and we have the capacity and the sourcing and the product plan and everything in place, for ever more EV sales, north of 40% by 30. That's more or less the plan.
Okay.
That could go higher if we need to.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, totally. Okay,
right.
No, I have zero understanding.
But back to this, let's say for a second, would you just say, we didn't care what the regulations are, we're just going to do this because we want to be carbon neutral by 2045?
Well, that's kind of.
Or is it like, we're business guys, like let's pollute a little bit more as long as we can?
Yeah. So I put it this way, Johnny. We will sell more EVs next year and more the year after and more the year after and more the year after, right?
Okay.
And there will be more and more and more electrification in the portfolio across the board, hybrids, EVs, P8. So all of that is up and to the right, no question. The steepness of that ramp is probably subject to
Got it.
Right, some factors. And there's a lot of moving parts in that too, because you have cost and price, right? So moving from Korea to the United States, that doesn't necessarily help your cost basis, right? So when you're resourcing away from the pivot from China, that cost basis changes, but it's not to the better. So that has a bearing on the business part of our business. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Super duper helpful.
But I want to thank you because we did take it into an area which I don't think we even thought we would ever go. So
but it's all part of long range planning. I mean, this is not the first time you've had these thoughts, right?
No, and I'll tell you something. I was kind of hoping we'd talk a little bit about this because it used to be in my I've been doing this since 1992.
Oh wow.
And in various companies, and it used to be most of the time you'd be making another version of the car that's already in the lineup. It's time to make another Civic. It's time to make another Accord.
Right.
It's time to make another Optima. And you could reference the current product, talk to the customers, what do you need, and you could come up with the product plan and the formula. And I don't want to say it was easy, but now the moving parts in this, the elements of that matrix we look at when we're looking at this is so complex with geopolitics, economics, more regulation, sourcing issues.
The human factor where you have some people like EVs have become politicized.
Yes.
And you have some people, I'll never buy one.
Yes. Right.
And so,
don't build your EV factory in my backyard. Literally happened to Rivian, right?
Yes.
Like, really? We're going to politicize this too? This is crazy.
And the politics, and just a couple weeks ago, we had some visitors from Korea. We were talking about some kind of macro level research projects. And, we had a list of things that 90% of it was related to EVs, consumer EV research. But they said, well, what else do you think we need to put on the list? And I said, there's two things. One is aging America. We need to understand that with respect to the Japanification of China.
Right.
And two, is the title I call it is Divided America. How does this work out? And, some of the work that I've done, it's really interesting, but you listen to people talk about it and you read about it and, they point the finger at the baby boomers are the problem or whatever. And I don't know if you guys study demography or economic history related to this, but there's another graph I'll draw here, and it has to do with generational cycles and the sine wave that exists, and how we as a society move between spring, summer, fall, and winter. And this is an aggregation of the mood, the economy, how I feel, generational attitudes and values, and how some of these move. And the point I'm getting to is that right now we're in winter. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for a lot of people.
Yeah, especially younger people.
Yes, exactly.
They really I mean, real quick, I was talking about housing prices.
Yeah.
Because my wife was like, should we, buy another house? And I'm like, if we sold just because of the interest rates we got and the taxes we paid when we bought the house, if we sold our house right now and rebought it with the money that we sold it for, the same house, our mortgage would more than double.
Yeah.
Just more than double. So, and we do okay. But young people getting crushed everywhere, and it can't afford EVs, they're too expensive.
Yeah, Johnny, this is it.
Yeah.
This is exactly it. And so now you have Gen Z, Gen Y in a life stage where normally they'd be building wealth, they'd have a house, they'd have
they're just drowning in debt.
They're drowning into school loans. They can't buy a piece of real estate, which means that their assets, their net worth is not growing.
Right.
They're kind of stuck. They may not be able to have the means to buy an EV. So my point in this little sine wave here is that the view is that all of that is going to change around 2030 or 2033. And
you know this how.
Change for the better, right?
Bitcoin's going
you
back
can't
up.
get any colder than winter.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
So we're going to get into spring.
You're just saying it's inevitable. It has to change.
Ooh, there it is. So
Could burn the bell.
it could be inevitable. It could be inevitable.
Okay, so you just think, I was going to shorten this, based on factors we've seen before, there's a way to come out of this.
It's either a prolonged winter, which would be terrible, or hopefully the sine wave returns.
Right, and kind of the view, getting back to politics here, is as a lot of the baby boomer politicians retire, Mitt Romney and a lot of the other guys retire,
die off,
that there is a lot of younger Republicans and Democrats in office who actually see eye to eye on things like gun control, healthcare, the environment, those kinds of
climate
things.
change.
Climate change. And so that's one part of this. And then the other part of it is the mood and the attitude and the values of young consumers. If you look at how do you think about EVs? How do you feel about EVs? How do you like EVs? How do you want EVs by generation? It's intuitively, both you guys know, the older you are, the lower the interest. But the younger buyers, Gen Y, they are so into it and so aspirational toward it. They may not have the means, but they want it.
Right.
Another little twist is, what are all these young Gen Alpha, Gen Z people riding? They're riding around on electric.
Yes.
So
am I.
Right. And they know and feel and like and want that electric smile. So I think if you kind of look into the pipeline of people, if you want to look at it that way, that the younger and younger people really have an affinity for electrification, right?
This is so true. I mean, I can't even tell you the number of just people employed by the car business that are like I remember I was in somewhere with an Audi guy, and he goes, "I bring home an R8, my teenage son doesn't even look at it. I bring home an electric Audi, and his friends are crawling over it. They're poking the screens. That's exciting. R8 is boring to them. It's an old man's car."
Yeah,
and it's wild.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about, and this isn't exactly the case because it is only the privileged subset of Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen Z, but there are kids right now that their first car was a Tesla. It was used. It's mom's Tesla. They grew up. They only know it.
Right. And why would they pay for gas?
Well, no. But when they can't even consider a gas car or a car where we just got into a vehicle. We maybe had some time in the new Tesla Model 3 Highland, and it's got this predictive shifting, right? It's got the car will tell you, assume you want to go backwards because you're parked up against the wall. You do that long enough, and maybe it doesn't work right now, but it's going to get better. You're going to have a generation.
It's 90% accurate now.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a generation of who've grown up in EVs that where the car starts when you put your butt hits the seat and it's ready to go. Right. You can't go back.
That's right.
Why would you turn the car on? What a crazy thing to do.
Exactly.
It's like telling kids, giving them an analog phone, a rotary dial phone, and trying to figure it out when they grew up with only an iPhone.
Exactly.
They're going to be like, what?
Which are the funniest videos on the internet? There's nothing better than call your house on this device.
They're like pushing it.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
Oh, those are the best.
Great.
Yeah.
So do you have anything? Because we're running out of time here. We surprised you. Is there anything we didn't cover that you really want us to tell our audience about what Kia is doing, about what's on your mind? We can take a quick spin through your own background if you like, but we're.
I think we covered so much of what's important. I think maybe the thing. So we have such EV competency in this company. We've done really well. We think that the EV9 is going to be a huge succse. The EVs that are in
by the way, we haven't even said this. EV9 is a 3-row EV. It's an SUV. It's an electric.
Awesome. It looks like Voltron's foot. It is so.
Cool. It does look cool.
It kicks so much ass. It looks so good.
But it's an electric 3-row, which is big because there just aren't a lot of them right now.
Yes,
and Americans love 3-rows.
The only competition
one baby,
right now,
you need a 3-row. Turns out
it's like the EQ Mercedes-Benz. What is that? The EQ.
It is a Mercedes EQ
and the Rivian
EQ SUV. EQS.
Because it's 3-row. There's only 2 out there right now.
Do you know how desperate Mercedes is to change their naming convention?
Oh my God,
they're so desperate because they don't even know what they're called.
I would say this looks better than both of those too. Definitely better than the Benz.
Yeah.
People like the Rivian. I like the EV9.
And the initial theme came from our Irvine studio, so that's really good.
It's nailed it.
Sorry to we keep saying
so
EV9.
So Kia has huge competence. We would agree. Like we think very highly of your products overall, but the EVs in particular have been very impressive.
Yeah, we're super excited about the current product, what's in the pipeline, the lineup, the brand, the direction the company is going in. It's super exciting and super cool, and it's a super cool time to be doing this.
When do we start to see, I forget the term you use, but like a Kia Soul that is on the the modern platform, not a Not an electrified.
Not a derivative.
Yeah, not a derivative EV. When do we? Where's the $29,000 Kia EV? When do we see that?
That's a couple years away, but we're fully aware of it, Johnny. That
Okay.
the sort of the white space or the opportunity. Yeah, it's a couple years away, but for the U.S., but it may be in other markets a little sooner.
Okay. Okay. That's good because that seems like the next frontier is get these 3-rows out. That's great, but it's $80,000 price point. Like they're not cheap, and what people want is
That's exactly right, Johnny. And if we could take just a minute,
just please.
So this is another part of like the macro strategy is that this product concept, electrified utility, is going to start here and it's going to continue to move down market. And that's part of the thrust of getting the mainstream people to buy this is that we want to, so if you look at the U.S. market, 2.3 million full-size pickups a year, about 2.2 or 2.3, we'll call them compact SUVs or we call them subcompact, so Sportage, RAV4. Those are the people we want to target with a proper EV SUV that's attainable, that's useful in a 300-mile range. I can charge at home, is bulletproof, dirt simple to operate, and can replace that Sportage or RAV4. And then sort of the math on this is that, those customers have about 3 cars at home. And kind of the view is at least one of them, maybe 2 of them can become fully electric.
Right.
Maybe not all of them, but maybe, and for some, and so on and so forth. So, but that market is what is going to be targeted. This is ID4, Aria, a little bit Model Y, but the price point's a little high. But that sector right there, BZ4, maybe so that target that.
So you're saying that you have a lot of that's a target-rich environment.
Yes,
highest volume.
Well, but also those are all pretty poor vehicles, I would say, compared to like an Ioniq 5. No, I'm just.
Well, and
but there's a reason why they have
And
a
a
low price
EV6,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, they have a low price point. Yeah.
this is a really important point, Johnny, because imagine taking a dedicated EV platform. And imagine taking a dedicated EV platform and configuring that vehicle with that tech we talked about. Right? That is so cool.
Yeah.
And with the Inflation Reduction Act, with a $7,500 point of sale rebate, which is what it'll be in 2024, that starts to put the mass market EV into a much more attainable price point.
It's higher up on that adoption curve. You
Right,
referenced.
exactly.
That's how you
Exactly.
So in other words, like a $35,000 vehicle can be yours for $27,500.
Or maybe a low 40s could be yours for 35, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Right, kind of thing.
But inflation's out of control. Go ahead. Yes.
but then below that will be other utilities, and those are the ones that are going to be in the high 30s, 28 to 32, something like that.
Yeah, I just know. Still talk to a lot of friends of mine that there's this under 30 for a new car it's just getting rarer and rarer. You know, and it seems to be.
So buy used. Teslas are like $27,000. Model 3.
We're in the new car business.
I know, but I like to tell people the truth too.
Really?
Yeah.
Since when?
And don't forget, there's a $4,000 IRA used EV rebate. Tax incentive, right? Yeah.
Can't forget that.
Okay, my last question for you, Mr. Long Range Planner, is: did you have any input? Was it part of your remit to redo the logo?
So that wasn't my
Kia
doing.
logo.
That wasn't my doing, but we have had umpteen conversations, Ed, about the logo.
Okay.
The logo. The dealers, everybody, the market, the media.
If you remember before, the Kia logo, it was an oval badge, and it just
was a
was
Ford
very
badge in
simple.
black and said Kia.
KIA on it. Yeah. And the new one is super cool, super angular. I dig
Stylized.
it. Although, I think we even wrote an article about it explaining it because apparently a lot of people are like, what is this new KV brand?
Or KN.
Yeah, KN, right?
And
brand.
backwards,
yes. Is that so? That's kind of how it's been. It's cool looking, but a little bit of confusion, a little bit brand confusion, or
maybe a little bit initially, but now I think it's fully accepted.
Yeah, to run more NBA ads. Put the whatever the sponsorship.
All right, my last question.
Big.
I think this is the last question. Isn't the EV6 just an electric rondo?
No, come on, Johnny.
In terms of packaging, isn't it kind of exactly the same thing? I love the Rondo. I'm going to just go out on a limb. That was a very cool.
Why did you bring the Rondo? We're joking a little bit because
a little bit.
John this morning, or as part of my research on Steve, I went and I looked. I do two things. I look and see if anybody's recorded a podcast
Ed's a
before,
stalker.
and then I also go to YouTube. And there is a YouTube video of you
At the Rondo launch in 2007.
2007.
Yeah.
Dust that off.
Young man, still on his game. Didn't chart any graphs.
Unlike now.
No. I did that in a good way.
Thanks, Ed. No, we're friends here.
Yeah. Well, that's Ed being friendly.
No, but if you don't remember the Rondo, we had one at MotorTrend. We had one in a long-term fleet, 3-row crossover.
But the second row really slid.
Did it have?
Yeah.
A big second row package.
It didn't
second
have a
row.
front bench, did it? It wasn't like
No,
some weird 9-passenger 3-row.
When
Awesome.
I was at Jalopnik, Bumbeck did this thing because he was so into the fact that it was A, called a Rondo, B, how big the back seat was. We did like a all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue. We went to like 4 different all-you-can-eat places and just gorged, and then like just laid in the back seat like, ugh, and it was the best.
How long were you at the company when you did that video?
I was about 2 years in.
Okay, that was your first project.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, actually, the first project was what we called the G project, which was the Georgia plant project. So they hadn't been named yet, but it was called the G project for Georgia, and that was the first one. That was like the second day, and this was interesting because the view was we're going to build a plant and we're going to build 330 or 360,000 units a year. Let's talk about work on what we need to build, like what fits. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, you don't sell 300. You have an export plan, right? Like, no, that's for the United States.
All right, follow-up last question. So from the Rondo launch to like, you got an EV6 GT, EV9. You're these really like, not only like, good vehicles, but kind of like best in segment by kind of a lot vehicles, and also first in segment. Like the EV6 GT, nothing like. Put yourself back in 2007 Rondo launch mindset or Project G. Like, did you ever see this? Like, does this make sense that Kia is where it is?
Parts of it, yes, which was in the sense that when I started, they had just hired Peter Schreier, and they were putting the pieces.
Was that far back? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 years?
And Tom Kearns had hired on as the design chief for the Irvine studio. And the kind of the pieces of the puzzle were coming into play. So there was a R&D chief who was newly hired. You had Peter Schreier. The Soul concept had just been emerged. And so you could sort of see the path forward was starting to come together with sort of a lot of really strong talent. But at the same time, there was also effort in Korea to start digging much more deeply into electrification. There were some hybrid projects.
That far back?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hybrid projects, EV projects. I worked on the first Optima hybrid, which was novel. And so sort of the little glimmers of this could be the way to go were there, but not like EV6. I mean, I'll tell you something. Some of the real moments came when we first saw the materials on the eGMP platform. It was like radical. And then some of the other moments came when we first drove some of the mules that were like, wow, this car is barely put together and it is really fast and really strong. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. We got something here.
Yeah.
So
terrific cars. I just because it's look, a lot of people, and this, like the psychographic of the average consumer is 10 years behind reality. It's like the Angus, our old boss, used to his thing with how do you turn a company around was, well, you got to build good cars for 10 years, and then it takes people 10 years to realize you're building them. It's a 2-decade transition. And, Kia was what it was when it came to the U.S. And, I still hear people say, like, if they don't like the way a car looks, they'll say, it looks like a Kia. And I'm like, have you looked at a Kia in the last 10
That's
years, like they're kind of leading the design.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
So it's just a crazy transition that we've seen for this company.
Thank you, Eddie. And that ties to, again, the company's ambitions, the leadership ambitions, and the drive, and the one of the things in my notes is just we have to work together to find a way to make this happen. Is kind of an internal team spirit culture that exists within this company, and it's obvious, I think. Yeah.
Well,
Cool. That's great.
It was awesome having you. I can't believe that you've been in the business since 1992. You're still very passionate. Is that what you said? 1992, right?
Well, yeah,
it's
but
92,
even
yeah.
longer than that. If I go back to, I worked at a dealership from 85 to 90.
Wow.
That's insane.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. What dealership? What brand?
It was a Lincoln Mercury dealership in Chicago. Remember those?
Half of those are left, yeah.
But
Sure.
we could talk about the future with you
This is
forever.
great.
So we're going to have you back at
Yes.
some point.
I was going to say that earlier, but yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Kosowski, it was awesome having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys. I really
yeah.
enjoyed this. It was really cool to talk.
Yeah.
Thank you.